works. Let's get ourselves set up. Let me see. I have to be able to set it up so I can see the chat too. Hopefully this new audio will work too. Let's see. Let's see what we're able to do. I don't think anyone is here yet, which is just fine. They're supposed to show up for the Europe live stream, right? So we'll just test it. Yeah. Noisy bird. So I think for now, we'll just test it here. I think that's going to be just fine. Let's turn on the ring light. And let's get the chat all set up. Yep. We're going to go to the chat on the actual page. Because on the actual page is where it's going to be easier. Hi there. I see 2 of you have showed up. They have requested, some of you had requested a live stream to talk about some of your questions that you had for me, since some of you wanted to ask questions, I think, related to more of the medical stuff, since I am. Good morning, Ken. How you doing? It's good to see you. Oh, I can see the chat from here. That's awesome. Oh, I like this. This is a good system. Can you guys hear okay? I have a binaural mic set up. Can you hear on this ear versus this other ear? It's kind of neat. It should work, and you should be able to hear it separately in 2 ears. So, but yeah, we're setting up our actual medical Q&A. So this stream is all about what you want to do, basically. Good. Can you hear that this is one ear and this is the other ear? Are you able to kind of hear that difference? It should sound different. It should sound like it's 2 separate ears. I know, it's exciting. They get really excited when I'm talking. Why are you rubbing your head on my chest? That's strange. Don't do that. That's actually, she's just being cuddly and sweet. There we go. How do we see now? Oh, isn't that wonderful? Now we can see so brightly. Hello, it's good to see all 3 of you. So please give me your questions, and I will answer your questions in medical ASMR. I would love to answer your medical questions. Obviously, because you and I have not met in real life, I cannot give you any, anything I say is for general education only, not for real individualized medical advice, since you and I have never met. And I would need to examine you and have a little bit more of kind of a personal knowledge of some of your things to be able to answer your, to be able to kind of really give you true medical advice, essentially. However, I can answer some general medical education questions that you can then take to your physician, and so that's kind of awesome. And I would love to do that for you. So that's what I'm here for on this stream, is since some of y'all had requested, ooh, careful, this particular stream is for the Europe Africa time. Some of you had requested some information and said that this, ow, don't bite me, I'm adjusting my dress, that this might be a good stream. This might be a good time for some of you. I know most of you, the American time is better. But yeah, so please leave me put your questions into the chat. I would like to see them. I would like to see them. So, and for the fourth person who joined, I'm glad to see you. I'm answering, if you don't know already, and the 5th person too, if you don't know already, I am, I think, the only physician doing ASMR on YouTube at this time, or at least the only physician doing it intentionally. No, don't eat lights. That's dangerous. I have my little birds with me. This is Mango. So she's a little bit loud, and so what I'm doing is I'm answering your questions if you have them. So please give me your questions to answer. I don't know if I'm missing some from chat. No. What questions do you have? Talk to me. Talk to me. Tell me what you want to know. Because otherwise, I will just talk at you, and that will be a problem for bird therapy. No, what questions do you have? And you can ask me questions about me too, and about some of the adventures that I have had. I mean, I've had a very crazy life. I've done everything from motorcycling in a monsoon with a gang member, just for the sake of bringing somebody who was discouraged some encouragement. And the trees were like falling down and it was very dangerous. I've done that. Everything from that to like I had to escape from it. I got myself locked into a nunnery one time and I had to escape from this nunnery. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful nunnery by the seaside. It was a German nunnery in Puerto Rico. What do you think about that? That's so strange, isn't it? And then, good morning, Marcus. Oh, it's lovely to see you. I thought that the other time would be better for Australia. So I'm also doing a live stream at 11 p.m. to hit you guys up. But I'm happy to see you. It's good to see you. So I'm taking questions now. Please type in your questions for me about any general medical information that you're curious about, or we can do questions about adventures and things like that. Or if you guys want, it's 3 I figured it's pretty early. I figured this is not this is kind of more the Europe Africa time, but you're welcome anyway to stay, or you could go take a nap and go to sleep. Are you having trouble sleeping? I hope not. I'm so sorry if you are. The most likely answer is probably yes, given what everyone is usually here for. Like 12 p.m. for you. Hi, Kiera. So yeah, please type questions that you have for me. Any medical questions, general medical information, or you can ask me. Okay, good. That's very good. I'm glad, Marcus. Don't bite in and anger at me. He's annoyed because I'm not letting him do everything that he wants to do. So I'm taking questions. And you can ask me, kind of medical things pertinent to yourself as well, but just know that everything I answer has to be general medical information, not specific advice, because you and I have never met. Can you hear that I'm whispering in this ear on this side, and then this ear on this side? I'm really excited about this new microphone. I also have some bubble wrap. So you can pop it while we chat. Do I think ASMR can be an effective tool for therapies? Ooh, what a wonderful question, Jamie. So, currently, and let me show you how to look this up. Currently, the scientific research is incredibly limited. But what you can do to stay on top of the latest scientific research is you can go to this website. This is pubmed.gov. I don't know. See, I was ready for you. pubmed.gov. And you can see. So, for example, looking at the most recent research in ASMR, it's pretty limited right now, but it's starting. Like, people are interested in looking into this, right? And some people are extremely interested in looking into this. So it's actually pretty awesome, because there's, I think, 128 results. They're not all good, but so this is one talking about using it in mindfulness therapy, which is a therapy that's currently used in both CBT and DBT, incorporating ASMR into that. So that's really cool, which is how I incorporate ASMR into my practice when I'm practicing in real life. This is essentially a review article arguing for ASMR from several physicians. Actually, it looks like 3 different ones, called More Than a Feeling: Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response is Characterized by Reliable Changes in Affect and Physiology. So that's kind of neat. The most interesting research article that I have found here, and I'll show this to you, is this one. It's called An fMRI Investigation of the Neural Correlates Underlying the Autonomic Sensory Meridian Response, also known as ASMR. And so that's essentially, they were trying to look at brain activity for people who were screened for ASMR receptivity, which is kind of neat. So long story short, what do I personally in my medical practice think? I think it could be a fantastic thing to incorporate, not just into psychological practice, but into personal practice. So I have, from my patients, one of the highest patient approval ratings in every clinic that I go to. When I was in medical residency, I had the highest ICE comment scores of any resident had received, and I got them all in 1 year. And then, sorry, someone just texted me asking, one of my old patients actually just texted me a question. I still have patients from all of my older things still contacting me about, oh, are we beautiful? Are we showing our beautiful butt? Yes. Have you ever been flirted with by a bird before? She likes ASMR sounds, and it will sometimes make her behave in that way, show her wings and her butt. It's very silly. Which I think is actually more evidence even that there is a physiological response with ASMR, right? So, which is specifically looking at ASMR as the meridian response along the meridians that go down the center of the back of the body. So that's specifically the kind of tingling or almost the sedation effect, right? Because even people who don't get ASMR can feel the relaxation, but specifically looking at the autonomic sensory meridian response itself, the scientific response, it needs more research. But as I was saying, I got incredibly high approval ratings as a physician from my patients, not from my colleagues. My colleagues all hated me because I would often argue with them. But my patients always loved me, and I really believe that incorporating certain ASMR things into my patient care was always very important. Another reason my patients always loved me was because I am an asshole about their care. Like, I will do whatever it takes to keep looking and find them what they need, which meant which is another reason that some other people didn't always like. Sometimes people didn't always like that. I'm sorry, I see that 2 people left when I said that word. I apologize. It's military speak. That's just how it is in the military. So I understand that part of it was attributed to that, to being incredibly aggressive in fighting for their care, and they appreciated that. But I agree, Marcus. But I think that it's not possible to ignore. I got you, Andrew. I'll get to that, and I'll also get to the CBD question. But I think it's important to not ignore the effect that kind of the gentle speaking and some of that can have on some patients and the way they respond. So I think that I have direct numbers that demonstrate that it helps with patients getting better. And that was something else, that my patients did get better because they were more compliant. My patients were more likely to do what I told them to do or asked them to do because they felt cared about. And that's based on, I had 100% Joe's and ICE approval rating at Thomas More Clinic. I had 100% Joe's and ICE approval rating at the FMRC that I was at. And then in Korea, I also had 100% Joe's and ICE approval rating. And I really think that ASMR made a difference in that, in helping those patients get better. Again, I didn't get along with my staff, with the other staff, and I think that may be also directly related to the fact that I only use ASMR principles when I'm interacting with my patients. To staff, I talk in a very strong tone, because it's kind of like, we need to get stuff done attitude. So you can look up, all that to say, you can look up current, I don't know how many of you saw the LeVar Burton video. Yes, tap, 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 tap. She's tapping. That's tapping that she does because she likes the tapping sounds. So she isn't tapping now. I don't have anything to tap on for you. Here, I'll tap on this for you. Okay, we're tapping for the bird. I like how LeVar Burton says, don't take my word for it. So don't take my word for it. Go to pubmed.gov and you can look up current research on ASMR, and that's very exciting because you can also share that with your physician. see how excited she gets? See, she gets right up to the tapping. She's really into it. See that? Look at that. Look at how she loves that. She might nip at my fingers to try to figure out what's going on. So the next question, so I hope that answers your question, but you can look up most recent ASMR research that way, pubmed.gov. The second question that I got was the CBD oil question. Now, I am a military provider. You wouldn't know it because I look like a disaster right now. So as a military medical provider, I am not allowed to recommend any kind of anything that comes from that plant. Okay, I can get in significant trouble. That said, there again, this is a place where I definitely do not take my word for it. Go to pubmed.gov and look up the most recent research both in CBD and in THC, because there's a lot of really good research that demonstrates that it could be effective for PTSD in veterans, and it may be effective in pain as well, which is very important and encouraging to people like me who have fibromyalgia and who are almost always in pain. So again, I'll show you how to do that. So this is pubmed.gov. I don't know how well you can see, but we'll try. There's a little logo right here. Pubmed.gov. Okay, and this is where physicians go to check stuff up. It's not like Google. Don't Google your medical information, okay? Go to scientific research and actually dig into the real stuff. You're smart enough to do that. See, she wants more taps. Do you see that? More taps. Tap, tap, tap. But now she'll bite me if I get too close to her. So, going to pubmed.gov, you can do the same thing. You can look up the newest research in THC. Okay, and THC is incredibly popular to research right now. So some of the first studies that are going to come up, the influence of THC, CBD, oral mucosal spray on driving ability in patients with multiple sclerosis-related spasticity. Right, so that's very specific. That's, does THC or CBD help patients with multiple sclerosis to drive? Right. They have an experiment on rats is also one of the top experiments. A lot of them are rat experiments because it's difficult to get funding for something that's currently federally controlled. But the benefit is because the states have by and large decided to ignore the federal government in many places, and it's kind of a states' rights issue that states have decided to just make their own laws and ignore the ATF. And that is opening the possibilities for a lot more research into these. I don't want you on my head though, because I don't want you to poo. It's helping to open up research opportunities. Why don't you sit on the computer? Yeah, that's good. It's opening up research opportunities. So rebellion is a good thing sometimes, depending on what you're rebelling about. I agree with that, Jamie. I don't think you're wrong. No, honey, don't eat lights. That's very, very dangerous. They have THC and gabapentin interactions in a mouse neuropathic model. So follow the science. Always follow the science. Unfortunately, a lot of medicine is influenced by special interests. And you see that especially in women's health, unfortunately, which I won't talk about here because I want to have a lot of control over it before talking about something so extremely political. Ow! Hey, be gentle. This is just my dress. Don't be scared of the dress. Don't be scared of the dress. That was mean. Yeah, I know. Okay, I know you want more taps, but you can't bite people to ask them to tap more. Yeah, that's rude. Yeah. Somebody wants more taps, so we'll do more taps. So that was, I hope that answers your second question. Let me scroll back through. I think the third question was, so the cannabis question, CBD. So personally, what do I think? I think that the science demonstrates that CBD could be very effective for chronic pain. However, not allowed to recommend it because I'm in military practice. The American medical system, oh boy. So I want this particular stream to be a little bit relaxing. So, and there's some pretty significant trauma that comes up when I remember specifically a lot of the residency training stuff that I have gone through, just because I saw a lot of deaths and felt that because of flaws in the medical system is why those deaths were not appropriately addressed. So I didn't want to go deeply into it, but I will direct you towards my medical podcast, actually, which is called Death and the Doctor. If you go to the Emergency Exit Podcast Network, Exit Podcast Network. Do you like the typing? Can you hear the typing at all? If you get, and actually there's always a link. If you go to any of my recent videos, there's a link to the podcast about halfway down in the description. And there I actually literally go death by death over the different deaths that I've seen. When I write these out though, alone and often with a lot of crying, or other things like that. So I go a little bit into stuff, but not too much right now. But so those podcasts are there's 7 new episodes coming now. I know if you currently look, I think there's only 3 up, but there's 7 new episodes coming now for a total of 10 for the first season, which is kind of describing. This is in the way. People don't want to see that. I'm sorry. None of you told me that there's a big old microphone right in the way of what you can see. So yeah. So go to the Emergency Exit Podcast Network, okay, and check out that podcast, and you're going to hear a lot there about my concerns with the American medical education system. But to give you an example, the way that young doctors are graded, give me just a second here to get this fixed. I think that's still not better. Okay, you move down, you move up. Is that better? No, that's not better. I'm very sorry. This is distracting me. There we go. I think no. Okay, I might just have to leave it and accept that it is what it is. I'm sorry, I dropped you right on your face. I hope your face is okay. I think your face should be fine though. There we go. So the first example I would give you is what young doctors are graded on in the by the ACGME are graded on 5 competencies, and only one of those competencies is patient care. I mean, can you imagine that as a patient? You would think that the main thing that would be a doctor's job would be patient care, right? That would be the number one. That's what that would be the thing. However, that is not the number one competency that a doctor is graded on. So please stop texting me. In fact, there are 5 competencies. Only 1/5 of what a doctor is graded on is going to be patient care. Other things that are important but should fall under patient care become equally important. Systems administration is considered equally important to patient care. Systems administration should be under patient care. You only need to understand the systems in so much as they allow you to take better care of the patient, okay? I think that as patients, we can all agree we would want patient care to be the number one priority for physicians. I saw physicians who were punished or even lost their positions because they were bad at secretarial work. They couldn't do their notes very quickly, and therefore they were punished, even if their patient care was fine, okay? And so that is a huge, huge problem that, and part of it is the AMA and the other medical organizations have established very bad standards from the very beginning. The very first test that you take to determine if you can get into medical school is the MCAT, okay? The MCAT has nothing to do with anything that has anything to do with taking care of patients, okay? In fact, the ironic thing is they recently changed the MCAT to, the MCAT used to have an essay section, a writing section, and they changed that to sociology and psychology. However, that section was the only section that corresponded to future tests of how good a physician did in taking care of their patients, because having a high verbal section was correlated with having high levels of compassion, which made you better at taking care of patients. The other 2 sections, physics and biology, which are the most important sections, and they're the sections that you're usually graded on, actually didn't correlate with how well you did taking care of patients. They did correlate with how well you did on your STEP score. However, the steps do not correlate with patient outcomes. So the steps are the most important tests that you take from the beginning of medical school. You take 3 of them. You take 2 in medical school and 1 right after your intern year. You have to pass all of them to become a doctor, right? So that's what I did. I finished my medical school, I got my MD, and then I finished all 3 steps, right? And you had to finish an intern year to be able to practice in the United States. But those scores that we have to take, that we spend our whole, people kill themselves, like literally die over not finishing. People literally die over not finishing doing well on these scores. Like, people have killed themselves over these scores. As you know, and I say often, the suicide rate for physicians is 70% higher than other occupations. We are beaten out only by dentists, okay? Which I don't understand, but I'm sure a dentist would understand better than me. And that's higher than all other health professions as well. It's dentists, physicians, and so forth. So, and part of it is this training exists to take the compassion out of you. Because again, patient care isn't the most important thing. Networking is another one of the 5th things. They call it professionalism or teamwork, right? So you have how well you can manage systems, whether or not people like you, are equally important to how well you take care of your patient, okay? That to me is unacceptable. As a physician, patient care should be the number 1 and only competency. Everything else should be under it. Obviously, your medical knowledge, which is demonstrated by your step scores and other things like that, is important, but that should be under patient care, because your medical knowledge is supposed to gear towards how well that's part of how well you take care of your patients, okay? So the ACGME is completely flawed. That's the first thing. The MCAT scientifically has no correlation to how well we do, but it does manage to significantly weed out people from underprivileged backgrounds, right? So you have less Black and Hispanic physicians for a reason, and part of it is how our testing works, okay? So because we prioritize things, I'm sorry, this makes me very angry and upset. We prioritize things that are not important to patient care and that have no scientific correlation to patient care. Again, the step scores, you look it up on PubMed, you look it up on other research, the step scores have 0 correlation to patient outcomes. So we're killing ourselves over tests that don't actually in the end help us with patient care. Give me just a second, my arm is hurting a lot, so I have to move it and I have to adjust this so that this carries it better. So I hope that answers a little bit of your question, Andrew. In thanatology. Oh man. Please do look at the podcast, Andrew, because there is a lot more information there, and I go a lot more in depth, and thank you, Jamie. Eventually I will go into a lot more depth and share a lot more of some of the darker side of a lot of things that I saw. And the podcast just goes through the system problems, not so much with medical education. It's not, I had a wonderful time in medical school in Puerto Rico. It was probably the best place in the world for medical school. My medical school was very compassionate. I had a friend who was going to an American medical school, that when her dad died, her dad was dying, her dad had a brain tumor, and she needed to take time to go take care of him. They said that they would kick her out of school, basically, if she did that. They wouldn't give her leave to take care of her dad, and they even said that the counselor even sat down with her and said, "You're going to have to think about your priorities." I mean, can you imagine that? Your dad is dying, and you have to think about your priorities because your dad shouldn't be a priority. Like, that is so, and this is a medical professional telling her that, telling this to a young medical professional, right? They've done studies that checking our level of compassion, starting at the beginning 3rd year of medical school to when we become residents, and then when we become attending physicians. And the way they checked that is they did surveys with questions about how we feel about our patients and so forth. 3rd year medical students are excited about their patients. They care about their patients. They feel their patient's pain. By the time you get to the attending physicians, the patient has become the enemy, because of how the system works. It's not even like specifically the physicians. This is how the way they teach you an intern year when you're working 80 hours a week, and that's minimum, okay? 80 hours a week is the legal standard now, but in surgical residencies, they're still working about 120 hours or more a week, okay? And so every time a new patient comes in, they're getting more angry and stressed out because you begin to see a new patient as the enemy because they're taking away from your ability to sleep and function. You maybe have been awake for 36 hours and another person comes with their pain and their suffering and you can't take it anymore and they become the enemy because of how these shifts are arranged, okay? Because quantity over quality has become the norm, and because we have a shortage of physicians. So why do we have a shortage of physicians? Well, it goes back to the MCAT. The MCAT is ruling out people who maybe are not really good test takers, but would be really good at taking care of patients. I told you at the beginning, I have 100% patient satisfaction rate from my patients, okay? However, my step scores were not very high. And the evidence, not just in my experience, but the scientific evidence fulfills that. You can look it up. The step scores scientifically do not correlate with how well you do as a physician, okay? So we're getting rid of people. We're literally killing some people off because some people literally die when they don't do well on these step scores, literally kill themselves, okay? We're keeping people out of medical school to begin with because we want it to be so prestigious. We want it to be such a high and difficult thing. Medicine isn't supposed to be a fancy thing. Medicine's supposed to be a trade, like working with your hands, like carpentry, okay? Carpentry, being a mechanic, that's what medicine is like, okay? It's just got a more scientific side to it. But we've elevated medicine and doctors, so doctors are this fancy, special thing. I'm sorry, this is not very relaxing stream now. But we've elevated physicians to be, have this high level in society and have all these fancy cars and all this other things like that. And so you have young doctors who sign up because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for prestige. They're looking to be pampered, which is not, I'm not saying that's wrong, okay? It's not bad to want to be successful. But then they get through medicine, they find out that's not, there's a high cost to pay before getting there, and it's not worth it. It becomes completely not worth it to do that. So I think a lot of what you're saying, Andrew, it makes a lot of sense. I think that it is valuable to be able to do multivariable calculus. I took multivariable calculus before going into medical school, and it was wonderful. And I took physics for physics majors instead of the medical education physics. Learning is always valuable. However, when you're testing, it's not about tests being hard, Memphis. It's about tests being geared towards what they actually represent, right? It's a problem if our step scores are not accurately representing or reflecting improvements in patient care. Again, people with high step scores do not have good patient outcomes. Okay, there's no evidence that indicates that having these high scores leads to good patient outcomes. So instead, you have, and there's a big problem with quality metrics too. I mean, you've all had experiences with that, problems with physicians, okay, in the US. And part of it is because we are not trained to put the patient first. We are trained to put systems first, to put self-preservation first, okay, because to survive in this very backstabbing, nasty environment, you have to be very tricky. And you're right, Andrew, it does start as early as chemistry. The chemistry that was a pre-med rec at my university, even if you earned an A, you weren't allowed to have an A because they would only give out A's to the top, they would give out as many A's as your lab group got ranked against other lab groups. So the lab group that got the highest test score would get maybe 3 A's, and then the next lab group would maybe get 2 A's and 1 A. So if you're in the third group, because the whole group ranked poorly, you won't get that A unless you are the top person. So the trick was to make sure your group ranks high, but then be the best and backstab everyone else in your group. Okay. So you wanted to rank high on the test because that ranking was by test. So for testing, you would be cooperative and work together. But in the actual labs, you would want to backstab and even maybe sabotage the other people so that you would get the best ranking. What kind of character does that bring in to our young physicians, right? You're bringing in young physicians. So the people who get through the medical education system are the psychopaths, okay? We are also, we look it up, we are also statistically more likely to be serial killers. We're more likely to kill ourselves as well. Okay, so the people who get through the system are more likely to have mental health problems because the compassionate people gradually become destroyed, get kicked in the butt over and over and over again as you continue on. Again, that study that showed where they took surveys of how we feel about our patients, third-year medical students were the most compassionate, and attending physicians who had finished medical school, who had finished residency, who were now teaching, were the least compassionate. Okay, this is documented scientific evidence. Okay. And so this is the problem with the American medical system, is that it weeds out compassion, and it is applicable in the psych field, my friend. I'm very sorry. Because although psych residencies, so psych physicians actually have the highest suicide rate out of any physicians. However, psych residencies are known to be a little safer and more friendly and relaxing. So they, theoretically, you would have a different, this compassion trend would be different for those people. But psychiatrists have to go through medical school just like everybody else. The gentleman, I shouldn't say gentleman, but the Fort Hood shooter several years ago, one of my mentors was the ER physician on that case, and he took care of a lot of the soldiers who were shot up by that guy. That the shooter was a psychiatrist, trained in the American residency system. However, that said, in this particular case, he was known to have a lot of beliefs that directly influenced what he wanted to do. Like, he had written things and said things that kind of indicated this was something that he was planning. So you got to take that with a grain of salt. However, it is a known fact that psychiatrists have the highest suicide rate out of any physicians, and this physician issue with how our trends of how shall I say it? Our trends of compassion change. The problem with correlation, step scores not correlating with actual patient care, all of those are issues. So how do we, to be a little more positive, how can we fix them? Unfortunately, to fix them, we would have to go one by one. And unfortunately, patient groups would have to be the ones to do it, because physicians are not going to do it. Because by the time you're through the system, you're really trained that the nail that sticks up is going to get hammered down. So in order to save your job and be safe and be liked by your peers, you really have to keep your mouth shut. So physicians and physicians who really do want to advocate for patient care usually are advocating for Medicare changes and things like that. That's really where the focus is. Unfortunately, we're kind of taught just kind of close your mouth, shut up, and deal with it. If you're depressed, don't tell anyone, shut up and deal with it. Is very much most physicians, like, again, another reason the suicide rate is so high is we know how we talk about patients with mental health problems. And so being a physician like myself with mental health diagnoses, or something like fibromyalgia, which is very stigmatized in the medical community, I've sat in residency rooms and listened to people say not very nice things about their patients with those conditions. So what does that make me think about myself and wanting to seek treatment, right? Makes me want to avoid it. I had to seek treatment, and I have received a lot of treatment, but that's part of the problem. So part of it is prevailing attitudes, but those attitudes are only going to be changed by getting the compassionate people in and allowing them to stay compassionate the whole time. But if we're weeding them out at the very beginning with tests that have nothing to do with actual medicine, again, the MCAT has nothing to do with medicine. It's how good are you at physics and biology. And then now, how good are you at answering other questions? And it's actually not even those. It's actually more of a reading comprehension test, because they give you information in these blanks. And then if you're very clever with reading comprehension for the biology test, you can kind of figure a lot of stuff out. The physics test, you have to be able to do math. That's what it comes down to. And you have to be able to memorize equations. So it's not even real physics. Thank you. I appreciate that, Frozen. Obviously we have to have we have to have tests to help people, get in. But the bigger problem is your medical education. You should be able to trust that your medical school can take anybody and turn them into a good doctor, right? So the standard for entering medical school doesn't have to be what it is. Medical school is where the standards should be higher, right? In medical school itself, a good school should be able to take anyone and turn them into a fantastic doctor, because we have a doctor shortage. We don't have time to be here saying like oh, I have to make sure we have to make sure to preserve the elitism of the field, right? We have a shortage. So we need more doctors. So to get more doctors, we need to take people, we need to train them, and we need to make them excellent. We need to make them good at patient care. So how are we going to do that? Well, at some point, actually, I want to put together a very large patient movement that's going to be way in the future, doing petitions and things about changing the MCAT standard, changing the standard for the step score, because you should be able to take your tests should be improved for patient care. Okay. Basically, we don't do a good job taking care of our patients. We have the highest infant mortality rate out of any developed country. Okay. And our developed meaning minority world country, right? So we're not doing a very good job. And we need to do better. We need to do better taking care of our patients. And a big place that starts is how we train our physicians and taking care. Hi, and taking care of ourselves. So I think that's kind of a leading question there. That latter question. That's not what I said. The question there from Memphis. But I think that I think that there are equally as many intelligent Black and Hispanic people in the United States, and the fact that most physicians are white is very telling. So I think that race shouldn't be a limiting factor and poverty specifically shouldn't be a limiting factor. And that's another thing is because medical education is so prestigious, and because physicians are expected to earn what they do, the financial barrier to entry is also very high for people from underprivileged groups. And unfortunately, we need more Black and Hispanic physicians to help with certain populations that respond better to people from their, to people that they identify with. I am neither of those two, and I'm still, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I'm neither of those two things, and I think I'm still able to provide good medical care to those populations. But speaking the language makes a really big difference. Okay, so speaking Spanish makes a huge difference in what I'm able to do, because I went to medical school in Puerto Rico. And there is a history of physicians mistreating the Black community in the United States. I mean, in the 1930s, the United States was doing experiments on Black people, okay? Poisoning water, doing sterilization experiments, and I'm not talking about like medical research, I'm talking about eugenics, okay? And there was a Tuskegee syphilis experiment where they allowed people who had syphilis to die so that they could see what the end stages of syphilis looked like. And so because of that history, a lot of people within the Black community are a little uncomfortable or afraid of physicians. And so a thing that would really help with healthcare for that is to have more Black physicians, right? Because we need to improve healthcare in that community. Because people know these things from back in the day, right? I know it's a long time ago, but there are still people alive who were living during that time, and their stories have been passed on. So there's that fear. So there's a lot of reasons why we need to make it so that we're pulling in more people into medicine. And a big way to do that is to change the MCAT, okay? Because the MCAT needs to actually reflect how well someone's going to do in the future. And it's going to take, I can't just sit here and say, this is how we should do it. I know everything. I'm a very young physician. I don't have the experience that many of my peers do, okay? But research needs to be done in order to how we can best make this test actually reflect patient scores. So it may be that there needs to be a personality or compassion IQ component to it, similar to the psychological tests that we use, because there's a large psychological battery that can be used to evaluate. It's actually used to evaluate if you're a psychopath or not. So those kind of questions in that psychological battery would be helpful on a test. So then you can get in people who are a little bit more compassionate, getting in people who have emotional intelligence, and obviously you have to have intelligence to learn medical information. So memorization tests would be very good, and algorithm tests. So tests more that are cognitive and functional into how your brain works would be more effective, because you can figure out, okay, how good are you at memorizing things? How good are you at memorizing medical facts, right? How good are you at thinking through these problems, right? All of that would be more helpful, so that we can get better, so we can get better physicians in the end who are more qualified and are able to do the right thing by their patients, right? Because their brains are working the appropriate way. So more psychological, more cognitive testing, and then testing for medical facts and information. It would be good to be given, like the Kaplan does for other tests, be given a battery of information. Like here, this is the information that I need you to memorize, all medical information. And then that way people could take that test and actually be prepared for medical school, right? Some of the first year medical school courses, how about we test on some of that information? How about we give that information to people in college, have them take that information, have them study it, have them take tests. Then they'll be more prepared for medical school anyway, right? So anyway, I know, Andrew, that's a very long answer. I think the next question was about whether or not physicians are provided psychologists, and the answer is no. You have to seek it out. In the military, I have very, very good access to care. The military medical system has pretty much the best access to care in the United States. So I do have access to psychology training. Leaving feathers and things in my hair. You are a disaster. Why do you have to sit on my head? Could you sit not on my head? Are you looking at me like, excuse you? Why would I sit not on your head? And actually, I spoke to a police officer recently, or not recently, a couple years ago, when I had a significant event, and this police officer came to check on me and make sure that I was okay. And what he said is, everyone who works in a traumatic environment, police officers, doctors, soldiers, should really see a psychologist once a week, just to make sure everything's all tuned up and you're processing the trauma appropriately and healthily. I haven't seen a study that says that, but experience would lead me to believe that he is not wrong. So it really, everybody should, everybody in a traumatic field should be getting a mental tune-up regularly. Why are you doing this naughty stuff? Why don't you just sit on the computer? Oh, you want pets? No, you don't want pets. What do you want? Oh, you want to sit on my head. I don't want you on my head, because sometimes you poo in my hair, and I hate that. Okay, thank you. The knee is the better choice. So the answer is no. It should be yes, because that would also change the stigma and the very high suicide rate among physicians. That would make a really big difference. It's actually it would be good if that was something mandated. It's mandated for psychiatrists, interestingly enough, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to be making a difference in their suicide rate, which is interesting. So there needs to be more scientific evidence or more look into like what would be the most effective way to manage that. I think that was Jamie's question, but I think it's gone. And somebody else. How fit in well in Australia. Oh man, my mom would be very sad if I moved to Australia, but I would love to go there and visit. I think there was another question earlier. Oh, what was the CIA video about? There was a forum about me on a white supremacist website, where they were calling me an N-word lover and a Jew N-word, and believed that I worked for the CIA because of one of my... What are you doing? Don't flirt with my toe. He's making nesting sounds at my toe. My toe is married. My toe is not single. Can you hear that? He's singing to my toe now. And the other one is going down to investigate what he's singing at and also tell him to shut up. So the CIA video was, I read through their forum, I took all their conspiracy theories that they said about me and made it into a video. I actually took quotes from the forum and put them in the video. Obviously I didn't put their racist quotes in the video, but I figured it was kind of a way. I didn't answer the forum, I didn't want to feed the fire, but I also kind of wanted to tease them a little bit because, you know, you just kind of have to. You're not supposed to poke the hornet's nest, but you know you just kind of want to when the hornet's nest is so. Ironically enough, that was the second conspiracy theory about me in a year. The first conspiracy theory was more work related, but this one on this forum was that I'm secretly working for the CIA. And they did a huge deep dive into my entire web presence, tried to find my address. They didn't find my address successfully, but they did find enough information that I went to a bunch of websites and I was like, yo, I'm being stalked. If you don't take down all my information right now, there's going to be problems. So they didn't find my address. They don't know where I live. It was a little scary for a little bit because some of them were very rapey also. Cause look, I ain't nobody's waifu, okay? However, some of it was funny. Like, some of it was extremely funny. So, I'm gonna change my audio source now here. I'm so sorry because this is such a good audio source, but I have to change the audio source so that you don't disappear. Because I have to plug in the battery. I'm very sorry. Can you still hear okay? I hope you can still hear okay. It's just not gonna be as pretty, not as pretty sounding. Please let me know in the chat that you can still hear. Putting this here. So I hope that kind of answers your question. That's what the CIA video was about. I was answering this. Was kind of answering this forum, and some people, not everyone on the forum is a white supremacist, obviously. I don't think that's that way anywhere, but some of the people were, and then other people started coming in and trying to defend me, and some people thought that some people really liked me after that video. They thought that was awesome. So I hope that answers your question. I think the next question, it was like a 4chan spinoff. Yes, it's 8kun. 8kun is where that happened. Oh, Marcus read it. Yeah, it was really interesting. They also accused me of being related to my little brother's death. That was special. Because my little brother did die a couple years back, and they were certain that in a military family, it would be impossible for him to die outside in the woods, because we would know our stuff better than that. He didn't die of a woods-related thing. In fact, his death was kind of unexplained because he drowned face down in 2 feet of water in a creek. It's very likely, based on his previous history, that he had a seizure. And fell down because he could also swim very well. There's no reason for him to fall face down in a creek. He went off by himself for a little bit. He hadn't had a seizure in years and years and years, not since he was 14. He likely had a seizure and drowned, unfortunately. So the kind of one of the good things was that he likely didn't feel anything. Drowning is not a fun way to go, and it's likely that he didn't feel anything because he was unconscious the whole time. He never would feel anything during the seizures. So if anything, it was actually probably one of the best deaths anyone could ever have, because he spent the day hiking in this beautiful place with his friends, and the pictures taken just a couple hours before he died are so beautiful. I mean, and he's so happy. And he was there with his best friends, and he had just told my dad that he was going to propose to his girlfriend. He had just told my mom that he was thinking about going into pastoral ministry, and that was kind of his new plan. He was happier than, he was very happy. And the messages that we got, I think one of the biggest concerns, besides losing my little brother and feeling like there was no more chance to make up the time that I lost. Because being in medical education, and especially being in the military, means that I missed out on a lot of my little brother's life, which is another reason I'm so passionate and angry about a lot of this medical stuff, because it's worth it only if I'm providing excellent patient care. If what we're doing is making a difference and making things better, then it's worth it that I missed out on the best and last years of his life. But if we're not providing excellent patient care, then I missed my little brother's last part of his life for nothing. And that's another reason it makes me very angry when we're not, like, very, very, very angry, to the point that I've had to work on it a little bit, when we're not taking care of our patients in an excellent way. And obviously we all make mistakes. That's not there are honest mistakes, and that's not, we do our best to prevent that. And I'm not going to fault someone for doing their very best, but I can fault someone for their attitude. I had a medic refuse to take care of a patient because she and this other patient were in a feud. And that was unacceptable. I got incredibly angry at her, and I yelled at her because it was not her patient. It was not her job, right? It's not okay. I had somebody else hang up on me when I was trying to find help for my rape patient. It's not okay. Oh, don't bite Cinnamon's toes. You okay, buddy? He didn't like that. Sometimes they fight. So, and that's another reason that I have very strong feelings about that, is because, if we've saved lives, then maybe it's worth it. But if not, it's not worth it. But after Jonathan died, we got all these messages from people who just felt so loved by him. There were a bunch of people who wrote about, there were some girls who wrote about him protecting them from bullying. There was a letter that we got at his funeral from a young man who wrote that he spent many, many long nights talking with Jonathan about the young man. The young man was really depressed and discouraged. He was a young gay man who was also a conservative Christian, and so he's reconciling his identities, and he spent a long time talking with Jonathan about these things. Jonathan was, I am not a Baptist, but Jonathan was a Baptist, and he had his beliefs aligned to scripture in a very conservative manner. So he didn't believe, for example, in a man marrying a man. And this young man was kind of like, was struggling through these things and feeling unworthy and all these things. And he wrote in his letter that every time he talked to Jonathan, he felt so loved, and that no matter what they were talking about, no matter when they agreed or disagreed, Jonathan always showed him that he was a worthy person and that he was a valuable person. And every time would say, "I love you," at the end of every conversation. And so this young man felt so loved by this, by my little brother who doesn't have the same experiences, doesn't have similar beliefs, completely different belief system, but he felt loved. And I was so impressed and proud of him for doing that, like for being so loving in a way that even if they didn't agree on things, very important things all the time, this young man was just overwhelmed with emotion and feeling cared for. And at the end of his letter, he wrote, "I never said I love you back, and I wish that I'd said it because I love you." So, yeah, sorry, that means a lot to me. Because I understand what this young man was going through, because I've gone through the same thing. So for me, it's so awesome. And Jonathan, my little brother, was the first person in my family that I came out to. So hearing that he was able to despite or maybe because of his beliefs, even though he had this conservative belief system, or because he, however he interpreted this conservative belief system, he was able to be so loving to this person that they could disagree and feel in love and loved. It's awesome. So really, in the end, his death was a good death. His death was an honorable death and was a happy death, and probably one of the most humane deaths you can experience because he was unconscious. We would all be so lucky to have such a death after having lived a fulfilling life, and made a difference and shown people they were loved. I think just that letter alone would be enough, and it was a secret letter. That, because he's shy about himself, but just that letter alone would be enough to be having been worth living for, right? So, why am I talking about my brother's death? Well, because as I said, it relates to the medicine question, but also to the CIA question. So that forum actually thought that I was somehow involved in my brother's death because of their funny assumptions, which was, I thought that was hilarious. Being a physician, I have a morbid sense of humor, so I was like, okay. I don't know, it's a fun fantasy, the idea that I'm secretly a CIA agent trying to influence the big thing that they were concerned about is that I may be trying to influence the country in favor of the Jews. Mm-hmm. Me and my evil Jewish CIA glow N-word. There are all kinds of really interesting slurs that I didn't know about before that I was called. So that's my alarm telling me I have to go to my doctor's appointment soon. But yeah, so I hope that answers that question. I think the next question was a tinnitus question. So I will recommend that you look at the full tinnitus video I did, because I go in a lot of depth there about tinnitus care, and things that new treatments you can ask your physician. I'm always really sad when people tell tinnitus patients there's no treatment, because it's not true. There's not a definitive treatment, but there's a lot of things that's being researched, and there's a lot of things that you can try. And my attitude with patients is always, don't give up, we're going to keep trying, and I'm going to keep trying until you stop trying. If you want, I'll even go experimental for you. It's as long as you are fully informed of the information and risks, and it's your decision, because it's your body. Yeah, even more kisses. So many kisses. But why? That's enough. People are asking about tinnitus, which you're probably causing. People have questions. Mm-hmm. Okay. How about no more kisses? So, please go to that video, because I went really, really in depth through all the treatments that I use and try for tinnitus. For example, there was a study that it was about 100 people study where they found that nortriptyline was beneficial. There have been studies on tinnitus retraining therapy. There have been studies on using white noise generators. What are you doing to my chest? Sometimes if I have a little dot or any imperfection, she'll try to get it off. She'll try to pinch, steal bite the imperfection off. Pew! Pew! You want to see her closer? She wants more kisses. No, how about gentle nose touches without bites? How about no bites? How about we don't bite? Yeah. How about biting is bad? Biting is bad. Don't bite people. Okay. You don't bite people either. So there are a lot of options and things that you can try. Another thing is, you got to make sure you know what's causing your tinnitus, because a lot of people never get that answer because their physicians are not very well trained in tinnitus. It's weird because the most common medical problems, this goes back to what I was saying about medical education. The most common medical problems are the ones that we receive the least training on. We receive more training on collagen replacement disorders, which are incredibly rare in medical school, and things like what is osteo imperfect sorry, words escape me right now. A bunch of other a bunch of really rare genetic disorders we get more training on than we do on common things like tinnitus and back pain. Your average physician really doesn't know how to take care of back pain. Your average physician really doesn't know how to take care of tinnitus. This is a problem in our training. Our training should be geared towards the things our patients are going to have, don't you think? That's what I think, anyway. But those are not exciting and sexy. They don't have really cool science behind them. The science behind a lot of them is quite boring. So tinnitus is very difficult to treat because a lot of it, the majority of it is sensorineural tinnitus, which means that the little hairs that wiggle in your ear and get sound, like deep inside your inner ear, have been damaged so that now they're wiggling for no reason. And that's why you're hearing sounds, because this is how you hear sounds, is that you have the little hairs, sound waves push the little hairs, and they wiggle because of the pushing, and then in the base, that mechanical movement and mechanical energy is transmitted into electrical energy that then goes into your brain, and that's how you hear sounds. When tinnitus, they're wiggling all the time, so you're always getting this electrical signal, which is why some new research is using things like tricyclic antidepressants in the tinnitus, because those tricyclic antidepressants affect those chemicals that help with the electrical transmission. So the idea is if you could dampen those, then you could maybe help with the hearing. Peep! Peep! And not have the tinnitus. Well, you don't need to yell for kisses. How about you just don't have kisses right now? She's like, excuse me, what? Let me look at her how she looks at me. She's no kisses. Of course we're gonna have kisses. Kisses. So please look at the full video. There is so much information on tinnitus there. Let's see, what was the next question? So blah 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 blah. I really birds. Jamie had to leave. I will say I don't think that our medical system is very capitalist, because our medical system is controlled by insurance company regulations within the government and in the private sector. So it's actually more of monopolist than capitalist. It's not really a free market. You can't just go and do whatever you want with your insurance. You can't just go to any doctor you want. What doctor you can go to is controlled by the government and by these big monopolies. So it's actually not even really capitalist. It's actually towards the extreme end of that, where instead of being free market, we are monopolist, where our market is controlled by these big insurance companies and the government working together. I wish that they would not do that, but I am not in charge of those things. So somebody left right away when I said that. I'm a physician, not an economist, but I tend to speak with very specific, I'm very particular. The other thing is, the benefit that the European medical education system has that we don't have is they work normal hours. I had a medical student from Europe come and stay with us while I was in medical school. She had time during medical school to, travel and enjoy herself. There was a medical student on this baker's show, the Great Baking, whatever. You would never see a medical student on a reality show in the United States, the Great British Baking Show. There's a medical student up on that. Having a normal schedule like a normal human being, I think is very beneficial to people in the long term. I think there was another question after. Okay, so I answered the CIA video. I think I answered the tinnitus video, the tinnitus question. I might have gotten everybody's questions. I think I answered that question. Have you figured out how to treat tinnitus yet? How important is your faith in relation to your work? I think is the next question. It is everything. You asked the question, it's going to get me in trouble. But my entire there is a verse in the Brit Hadashah where Paul writes and says that if the Messiah is not resurrected, then we are the most miserable of people. Meaning that our and there's a rapper called Lecrae who, when he explains that, he says that means, like, he has a wonderful rap about that, called, I think the song is "Don't Waste Your Life." Yeah, I used to have the rap memorized on my old channel, the Peter Pan channel. You can see me rapping that song. I'm not a good rapper, but I really like that song. And I don't remember the line anymore, but the specific part of the line was, that means that our lives are built around him being alive. So if my entire life is built around this idea that there is a intergalactic being who came down, who like has loved me and my people forever and ever, and through the Jewish nation provided a Messiah for the whole world. He decided to come down and become a little person and hang out with all of us little humans, right? If that's true, if it's true that there's this huge overbeing who's outside of space and time and who has love and compassion for everybody, even for this being who has to deal with loving evil people and good people at the same time, with wanting to stop evil and help these good people, but at the same time give these evil people a chance to turn around and do the right thing, right? What a difficult struggle that would be. What a difficult thing if you love both the victim and the murderer. How incredibly painful that would be, to be that being. Like, it would be terrible. And then to have so much more love than we can have, because the being is so much bigger, so it has more capacity, right? Being that divine thing, if that exists, and Yeshua ben Joseph, called by the Gentiles Jesus, right? If that person is the Messiah and is, this divine being come to take care of us all. If any of that is true, if all of that is true, and there is a way to come back from the dead without being a zombie, right? Because really that means that I don't make fun of other people's faiths, because I recognize that mine is very weird. I recognize, and you came in, those of you who just came in at a really weird part of this medical stream. I'm answering the question, like, how does my faith influence my work? So this is a weird part. But if all of that is true, my faith is pretty weird, and I respect and understand if other people don't understand it, because it is. I believe and follow a 2,000-year-old Jewish zombie. And that is a strange thing, and I'm not ashamed of that. I embrace that weirdness wholeheartedly. But it means that I can't judge other people's belief systems for being weird, because mine is particularly weird. And my Messiah said that he is the way and the truth and the life. So he is the way to heaven. If that's true and he's the way, then like my whole life, and he's the only way. And if it's true that he died and came back from the dead, if any of that, if all of that is true, then that means that my whole life has to be about helping other people to find that way, and loving on other people, and giving them, making changes like he would make in the world, right? That's, and it's crazy, because he was, it talks about, like, speaking the truth in love, right? There's a place where there's a woman who's about to be killed for adultery, and he saves her and protects her and doesn't let the other people judge her. But then at the same time, he turns to her and tells her, don't do it again. Like, he does both things. He is truthful about things that are not good, things that are harmful to ourselves, things that are harmful to the universe. And a lot of times the truths of the divine are not logical to us, and they're not always easy for us to understand. And often they might be very offensive to us. In very different eras and periods of time, they have been. So he's going to be offensive In some countries, he's going to be offensive because of his love. In other countries, he's going to be offensive because of his truth. In a lot of majority world countries, he's offensive because of his love. In minority world countries like the US and Europe, your different European countries, he's offensive because of his truth, because he's more hardcore, and sometimes in ways that seem very harsh. And it goes the other way. So within all that, there's this like mandate to love on other people and take care of them, and do everything possible to, because if he cares about them, well, I gotta care about them. And because you just do, because if you have somebody that you love and they have children, for example, you automatically will love their children because you love them so much. It's the same, like, I really don't like dogs, but I have kind feelings towards my best friend's dog because she loves this dog so much, right? So you love what your lover loves. So and the corollary of that verse, if there is that there's no holds barred. It's like you're jumping off a cliff. Poop, poop, poop. Be quiet. You're too loud. No holds barred. It's like you're jumping off a cliff, because if you give your entire life to this thing and it turns out to be false, your life was kind of miserable. I wouldn't have gone into medicine except for the fact that my friends in Paraguay don't have access to medical care, and so I was like, well, that's what I need to become. I need to become a doctor, so I can go to Paraguay. The I wouldn't. I would have a lot better writing career. I have a good writing career. I just got a publication deal. You've probably, those of you like sci-fi, probably heard of Kevin J. Anderson. He wrote some Star Wars books, some Dune books, and stuff like that. I just got a publication deal with his press, so I'm doing okay for myself. But I would have done a lot better a lot longer ago. And multiple people have told me, like, if you would take out some of these themes from your work, you would do better. So there's a lot of opportunities that I've lost because I chose to try to do medicine for the poor, or because I fought for people who are, lower on the totem pole, because I felt that that's what my Messiah would do. So, and then, like, even as early as high school, I had an entire school bus of people yelling at me for talking about my faith by myself to, like, a dude sitting next to me, and we were just talking and it wasn't anyone else's business. So, like, my life as a whole would be a lot easier if I didn't believe something that is so ridiculous and out of this world, and it would be easier. But my patient care would suffer, because this is like knowing this, being, this over being, as the being who is the healer, the being who wants to heal our souls, right, and bring us in communion to him and save us from the horrible alternative. Obviously I believe in heaven and hell, also very unpopular beliefs these days, but like, believing in a terrible scary thing gives you so much more. I mean, it's a better story, is the bottom line. That's not the reason to believe it. I believe it because I have actually seen evidence and things that support these things. I was agnostic for a while, and I believe what I believe because of agnostic investigation into both science and history and historical documentation. So I believe what I believe because of reason. But you gotta admit, it is a much better story to have a hero up against, really difficult, dire and awful consequences, right? So believing in these things that are very unpopular makes me so much happier and so much more, like, because I struggle with depression, knowing that there's a being that loves me, that suffering is worth it, and that these things in the end aren't going to be totally useless, and that while I can see great evil in the world around me, because it's really easy to believe in evil because that's what you see all the time. Really, the difficulty is not believing in hell, but believing in heaven, because everything is terrible on this planet. People are so nasty to each other. I want to mention this Liberian orphanage again, that I have been trying to support. I really would like you guys to please go to hishandsupportministries.org/Liberia and consider sponsoring a child. The lady who runs this orphanage saw her brother chopped up in front of her during the Civil War, and a lot of other terrible stuff has happened in her life, and yet she's so happy um, taking care of these other children who have nothing, right? But it's an evil thing to me. It's a very evil thing to me that they have so little and we have so much. And so I'm trying to even out and fight that evil by giving to them myself, and encouraging you to give to them as well. But sometimes, and that's one example of evil. I mean, I was a sexual assault medical forensic examiner for a year, so I saw a lot of people who had suffered great evil after, rape and sexual assault. And so, to me, I see so much evil in the world. It's really good to know that it's not pointless, that the evil is here because you've got this struggle of how does God love the victim and the perpetrator? How does God save the perpetrator and give them a chance to turn around? How does God love the victim and bring justice? And that's the thing, is that in the end, there's going to be justice, because at some point, he can't take it anymore. At some point, he's just going to be too, he can't take people being nasty to each other anymore. And that's, we have a lot of fiction in our in our cultures. I think in Europe, in English-speaking Europe, the U.S. and Australia, we have a lot of fiction in our cultures about apocalypse. Really, the people who should be afraid of apocalypse are the people who are being unjust to other people. Which in some cases is all of us, right? We in these 3 areas of the world are very wealthy compared to the rest of the world, and we have so much power, and that doesn't have to be a reason for guilt. That can be a reason for change and motivation and making a difference, because we have so much power to make a difference, right? But on the corollary side of that, there is guilt if we don't make a difference. There is guilt if we are not helping, because then we are, it's not good. There are people who are just like us who need so much help and so much love. These little girls were just telling me that they needed, they have no toys, and they were asking just for deodorant, is what these little girls were asking for. I called recently. I call the orphanage every so often, because Isabel, the director, is a good friend of mine. And the little girls, to be beautiful, these are the young teenage girls, the beauty products that they want is deodorant, right? You think of the beauty products that we have access to, I mean, it's crazy. They don't have access to these things, just to feel beautiful and feel like a young woman, right? And then there's a young boy who has a amputated leg, who doesn't have anything to walk on for that leg. He doesn't have any kind of peg leg or anything even. There's another young man who's got who's going into liver failure. His medications cost $450. They don't have that. I sent recently to cover his first batch. Hi, what are we doing? I sent recently to cover his care and medical care for some of the other kiddos. But quite frankly, hey, no, don't eat my computer. No, stop. Oh no, what am I going to do now? Oh, that was so bad. But quite frankly, it is very difficult to support 35 children by myself. So that is why I'm asking for if somebody can help and go to hishandsupportministries.org. If it's only $50 a month to sponsor a child, I don't send through there. That's tax deductible. I actually send directly to Isabel, which if you'd like to do that instead and send, I can help you with that. You can contact me, email me at jen@becominghero.ninja. I have my money wired directly to her. But if you want it to be tax deductible, which is quite intelligent and maybe what I should do, but if you want it to be tax deductible, go to hishandsupportministries.org/Liberia. $25 a month will half sponsor a child, $50 a month will full sponsor a child. So I know that was kind of a segue off of the kind of the resurrection verse. But yeah, everything I do is influenced by this. Doesn't mean I'm a good person, because I'm not. I'm very grumpy and I'm like this little bird. I can be very bitey. I can be a very bitey person. But ow. So that's not what it's about. But everything does, like all my big life choices, the decision to go to to be saving up to build a clinic in Paraguay, the decision to try to increase. I'd like to be giving, right now I'm only giving, I'm at where I can give 30% of my income to charity. I'd like to make it that we're giving 50% or more. Unfortunately, a lot of what it is I'm saving up for my clinic in Paraguay to help the poor. So because I'm saving up, I can't give to all the human trafficking organizations I want, or as much to the orphanage as I would like to give. So I'm supporting a lot of their major costs right now. It would really help out if someone could support one of the children and their costs. So, because 35 kids split between all of us is a lot easier than 35 kids, just Isabel and me. So his handsupportministries.org would be great. But yeah, so like all of these decisions are influenced by, what I believe about the reality of the universe. Because if you really believe that the universe is on a fast track to sad things and to destruction, that there's only one way to save the universe from, then you would make your whole life about that, right? And I really do believe there's only one way to save the universe. And so I'm trying to do my best to be part of that big, big way, because we all have a little part to play. So it would be a lot easier if I didn't believe those things, because then I could just feel like, oh, I'm a good person if I just do this thing, and I wouldn't have been a doctor because I hate medicine. I would have been something else. I probably would have done full-time writing, but in a different way than I'm doing now, with more. It would have been more. It would be different themes, because I tend towards certain themes that would have that I can't do because of my beliefs. That would have been more fun and funny. I'm a very good writer of certain topics that I can only share with my husband. I'll leave it at that. I could have made a lot of money doing that. Hi, Boop. Hi, Boop. You want more pets or no more pets? More pets. When I'm not petting him right, he will bite me. He has to have the optimal pets. So I have to go to my doctor's appointment now. I'm going to check real quick if there's any other. I think I've gotten all of your questions. That last question, how important is your faith in relation to your work? Definitely going to get me in a lot of trouble. But to answer it real short, it's everything. It's everything. It is everything. I will also change the question too, because I am not a person of a lot of faith. Like I said, I've been very agnostic. I'm a person who has to be proved everything many, many times before I'm comfortable believing it. But it's not so much about how much I believe in him, but he believes in me a lot, and that's saved me over and over again. There are multiple times, because I have significant medical, like the neurotransmitter imbalance up in here is real whack. So I have significant medical depression issues, and he saved my life on several occasions. Yes, not always in a fun way. Sometimes in a very dark way. Sometimes, using scares and other things like that. But whatever it takes to save my life and keep me going, I appreciate it. So, thank you for joining the stream. It's been far more controversial than I hoped for it to be, because y'all asked some difficult questions. Next time we'll do just medical, like questions like the tinnitus question. Easy questions next time. No, we won't do these big issue questions next time. I will be back on the Australia time stream at 11 p.m. CST, 12 p.m. EST. I think it's 3 p.m. Australia time for Canberra. So I'll be on that later tonight, and we'll do different questions then. And I think then we'll do more of a triggers stream, okay? And we'll let you request different triggers while we ask the medical questions, okay? Thank you so much for joining and being here. I hope that you have a lovely, lovely afternoon. Bye-bye.